Welcome. I had an issue with my fuel gauge, so I figured I'd have to get in there to my fuel pump area anyways, so I wanted to go ahead and make a video for maybe anybody who's interested in how you actually access the fuel pump and change it out. So let's get started. Of course, it's a tight area back here. Ignore the mess, but I'm going to show you the first thing is you're just going to pop this up. This whole top piece right here comes out, and all you got to do really is just grab and pull. And as you can see, it just comes right up. Of course, you might have to fight with the seat a little bit. The best trick is when the seat's in, to just take it. It's going to get caught on this, but it's got some flex in it, so you will be able to pull it up and over and then just pull it right out. Once you get the seat out, you'll be looking at this area. You'll notice you'll have two sides. Your fuel pump is going to be over here on this side. And you'll notice you'll have some bolts right here that we'll have to take out. Try to be careful not to tear any of this, but you can actually take this mat and just pull it right through here to just kind of get it up and out of the way a little bit, so you just have just a little bit more working room. And then we'll go ahead and we'll remove this top piece right here. Like most things, this takes a 10mm, and mine's already been broken off a long time ago when I changed my fuel pump, so all of my stuff's fairly loose, or at least not that hard to get off. I can get mine off by hand right now, and then you'll have to access this back one too. Get those bolts off, we can just pull this right up. But before we go any further, I do want to mention that I undid the battery before I even started working on any of this. Because the last thing I really want to do is die in the back of an M3. So, but when we take this off, just be really careful with it. You'll notice we have a few different things that we're going to have to take off here to access, and then we'll get to this part, which is basically going to be the biggest part of getting this thing out. First thing we'll take off is this piece right here. This is pretty simple. Just be, of course, careful with everything, but this piece just slides forward. Notice that gap there now. This just slides forward. And then once we get it far enough forward, we can just take it right off. You'll notice I just slowly rocked it back and forth to try to just pry it off without hurting it too much. And then we'll just lay all of this over out of our way. Just kind of tuck it up in there a little bit so it'll just kind of stay out of our way. And then the next piece we'll take off is this. And of course you're going to want to make sure that you run your fuel tank down a little bit. Otherwise this stuff's just going to all spill out. And you might want to expect that some of the fuel is going to come out of this just a little bit, but it shouldn't be too much, and all you just need is a rag to kind of catch it all, but this isn't too big of an issue right here. I have some rags on standby. We'll go ahead and take this off. The trick to getting this off is to kind of give it a little press forward. It's hard to do this with one hand, and then you'll press those tabs in, and then you can just pull it right back out. I had to set the camera down so I could kind of get this off. Like I said, it kind of requires two hands, but like I said, just push forward a little bit, press these two tabs in, and then you kind of work it backwards, and then it'll come right off. And you'll notice I'm starting to get some fuel is coming out in there. So I'm going to go ahead and get this cleaned up, and then we'll come back. Alright, so once you have this off, you kind of want it out of the way so you can get to this ring. This ring is really the key issue with everybody. You can just kind of tuck this back here and come back for it later. But this ring is going to be kind of hard to get off. Like I said, in the past, I've already had mine taken off before because I've already changed all this whole unit before. But BMW makes a specific tool for this. But it's kind of expensive, like all BMW stuff. And as far as I know, it's not really good for anything else. So you can do what most people do and use a flathead and a hammer, which is what I did. Right now I have a ratchet. It doesn't matter. Just anything that's flat that can get kind of in these tabs and you just kind of slowly work yourself around and just kind of break it loose. And don't be surprised if it takes a while and it takes a few good hits. The first time I did it, I used a flathead screwdriver and a rubber mallet, and it took me forever. I really thought I was going to have to get the tool, but I stuck with it, and probably about, I don't know, 20 minutes later, it finally started to break loose enough that I could finally get it off. But like I said, you'll just kind of start tapping it and give it some pretty good taps. That's why I used a rubber mallet. I didn't want to do too much damage to anything in case I slipped or something. But I just kind of slowly worked it around, mostly concentrating on this and trying to get it as level and flat as I could to kind of get all that rotational force around. And I finally broke it loose and got it off. You may have some piece of sticky over here that you'll have to like kind of pry back. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward. Just be patient and it will come off at some point. So mine's off. And like I said, mine was already loosened before, so this just didn't take me any time at all. Now here we go. Now when we lift this up, this is the whole point of having the fuel drained out, because otherwise this will just start splashing around. Trust me, I did it by accident before. I thought I had enough fuel drained out, and I did not. And this was just... And this thing will keep getting in your way. This happened to me last time too, but that's why it's good to not have a camera in your hand and to have two hands when you're doing this. But you'll just you can kind of use this and just give it a little force. You'll notice it has a little section where it only goes in kind of one way right here. And I just slowly pried myself up a little bit because this plastic doesn't feel like the strongest piece of stuff in the world. And there is a rubber seal in here kind of keeping it in, so you'll just work it out. And I'm gonna have to put the camera down for this, but you'll just work it out, and then be careful because when you pull it up, you're gonna have a hose that's kind of in the way, and you need to watch that seal. And then the other thing is when you start to rock it out, and I'll show you, you're gonna have to be careful whether that hose doesn't wrap up in the float level. I'm gonna have to set my phone down again, obviously, to take it out, but I went ahead and pulled it out so you can kind of see that you're gonna have to work this around. And see, even with burning out most of my fuel, you can see my fuel's kind of still at the top, a pretty good amount. And when this thing comes out, usually it comes out in a quick rush, so if you have any kind of close to fuel at the top, if possible, I'd burn it out to at least 1/4 of a tank. But you'll kind of have to work it around, and the float level is on this side over here, so you'll kind of have to just work it and kind of get that out without getting hung up on anything. But like I said, I'm gonna have to set everything down and then pull this out. You can see what I'm talking about, and you can see this little seal right here. Be very careful with the seal. It sits right in that little placement. I had to pull it out first so I get my hands on it, and then you can see that you'll kind of have to just work it back and forth. You see the little level unit, but I mean, that's pretty much it. Other than that, you just reverse the steps. When I changed mine out, I actually changed the entire unit instead of just a pump over here. And then I was actually able to sell my other unit on eBay and actually got some of my money back, so I really didn't pay that much for a brand new pump. But other than that, that's it. Like I said, just be careful putting the other one back in. Be careful with this seal. Make sure it's completely set down into that little hole before you have everything put back on. And not really much to it. Like I said, the ring is really the hardest part of this whole thing. One last thing when you're putting it back together. When you're tightening this back on, what I do is I just hand tighten as much as I possibly can. And then I go back to the screwdriver and stuff, and I give it just a handful of taps. You don't want to over tighten this, because I mean, you can just keep tightening until you break something. So careful about over tightening. Other than that, this is it. Now after you got all this done, you should have a brand new working fuel pump.